Hey everyone, this week I'm sharing an episode where my twin sister interviewed me on her podcast. Yes, I have a twin, and yes, she has her very own podcast. It's called The Missing Link. This episode was when she interviewed me all about performance anxiety and how to work through it when you experience physical symptoms like walking with MS. But as I was listening back to the episode, I realized that there are so many parallels to other forms of anxieties, especially anxieties that we face as working moms, like performing at work and even stepping into leadership roles as ambitious women. And honestly, just the anxieties of judgment that we fear from other people. I loved sharing my strategic journaling approach and specific tools like the worst case solution technique, that's one of my favorites, and my Calm Mind blueprint. Those aren't just tools for physical symptoms like you'll hear me explain in the episode. They're for any time you're worried about what other people are thinking, whether you are walking into a meeting feeling like you need to prove yourself, or you're presenting to your boss, or even just picking up your kids from school after a long day when you feel like you're barely holding it all together. The tools that I share will help you separate who you are from how you perform so that you can show up confidently even when things don't go perfectly and even when people might be judging you. I really loved this conversation, so I hope you enjoy it as well. Hi, I'm Sam, your inner voice and self-trust coach for women who refuse to choose between career success and being fully present with their kids. This is Journal Entries, where we break free from self-sabotage, reconnect with our inner wisdom, and live truly fulfilled lives in both of our roles. Let's dive in.
Hello. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Have you ever psyched yourself up to go out, whether it be to a school event, a grocery store, a restaurant, meet up with friends, whatever it might be, and as soon as you step out, the thought creeps in, will people see me limp? What if I freeze up? What if I look off? What if they pity me? If so, you are not alone. Today, I am joined by my twin sister, Samantha, who is a journaling, mindset, and clarity coach who helps people rewrite stories that hold them back, including performance anxiety. She's going to take us through a coaching session for people with MS experiencing performance anxiety. She provides one tangible strategy that you can implement before, during, and after the emotional struggle of what others might be thinking while you walk past them. These tips can, of course, carry over into other situations as well. So if you are someone with MS who has that sense of anxiety of what others might be thinking about you, the way that you walk, your condition, this is going to be a great episode for you. And she also has her own podcast where she shares her expertise called Journal Entries. Samantha, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me on.
Of course, I am very excited to have you on because I've had you on the podcast before, but it was more so for broader concepts of how to journal to actually have a breakthrough and how to overcome self-sabotage. And those were amazing episodes, don't get me wrong, but we have something extremely specific that we're going to be talking about today. And this all came up because I was doing a group coaching session and one person explained that she has MS and she has performance anxiety. And as soon as she explained what she meant by this, about 5 of the other people said that they also have experienced that on different levels. For some people, it was daily. For other people, it was once in a blue moon. But for some people, this performance anxiety can be crippling and it can isolate them and make them less social. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And as soon as they mentioned this on the call, immediately my thought was, Oh my gosh, I have to ask Sam because I just know that she has a strategy for this that would be very different from my strategy, which would be more of a physical therapy based strategy. So before we dive into that, can you just share a little bit in case people haven't heard about you and the work that you do from our previous podcast episodes?
Yeah, my work is very different from yours. Like you said, yours is very physical and mine is very mental. I love helping people get the clarity that they need. And I'm realizing now, lately more than ever, that sometimes they don't even realize that it's clarity that they need and self trust that they need. They just know that they're in the weeds, they're in the trenches, they feel stuck, sometimes physically. And often we just need a different perspective with a tangible tool to help us see differently. And that will help us feel differently, which will then allow us to perform and behave differently. And all of that whole equation will truly allow you to become happier and feel more free and live a more free, happier life.
I love that so much. And your approach is so unique as well. So I'm excited to dive into your tips for this specific situation. But let's just start off with how you would define performance anxiety, specifically in situations where mobility and visibility intersect. Like when someone with MS is walking in a public space and they might feel like judgment from other people looking or maybe worrying about what they look like and how they're walking.
Yeah, I once heard a quote that said depression is living in the past and anxiety is living in the future. And I couldn't agree more. I think anxiety is being fearful of future events that trigger fear about the meaning we're attaching to it. And typically that's perceived expectations or emotions and judgments. And performance anxiety, I think, especially with chronic illness, isn't just about walking perfectly. I think it's the meaning that we're attaching to those visible symptoms. And so when we think about the anxiety and the fear that comes with walking, as an example, that's where we start to think, well, what if people see my limp? They might wonder why. And I don't want, what I've heard from one of my clients is, I don't want people to pity me. I don't want them to notice this and think differently of me. And so with performance anxiety, it's that fear that others will judge you for your worth based on how you move through space, about how you move, about your physical symptoms, rather than who you are as a person.
This is already getting deep. So, why do you feel like these fears of performance anxiety feel so physical and emotional at the same time? Because I understand the physical, and I've got physical tips for people, but it's the reason I wanted to have you on is because oftentimes, even if you do get stronger and get better balance and improve your walking, that performance anxiety is still there because it is mental and emotional. So why do you think it is that these happen at the same time?
Yeah, I call it anticipatory anxiety. And this happens in so many different times during our life. It happens a lot during the holidays, even just anticipatory stress of all of the things that go on, right? But when we're anticipating judgment, especially our nervous system gets stuck in fight or flight mode or fawn or freeze, right? There's 4 different phases of that. And so when you're thinking of whatever task you have to do, maybe walking to your car, from your car into your kids' school if you have to go help out with something, or into the grocery store, into the restaurant, wherever it is, and you expect that others are going to be looking at you, just thinking of that might make your heart beat a little bit faster. Just hearing me say that, right? And your nervous system spikes. So it's a physical sensation and an emotional feeling, because attached to that nervous system spike, it's that emotional fear, it's that emotional discomfort. Also, studies show that journaling 3 to 5 times a week for just 5 to 15 minutes a day significantly reduce stress hormones and helps regulate your nervous system. So that's why my mindset tool, not physical, well, it is a physical tool as well because you're writing, but that's why I love the strategic journaling, because it literally slows us down and it brings us to the present moment, and it disrupts those sabotage patterns like overthinking, which we get caught in when you're overthinking about walking into a certain space or walking in general or whatever the symptom is, and the sabotage pattern of restless and hyperachieving. So finding something like strategic journaling that can bring you to that present moment.
That is such a great answer. And for anyone who didn't listen to the previous podcast episodes, episode number 107 of the Missing Link podcast is called Journaling to Uncover Your True Voice. And this is where Samantha explains strategic journaling, and it's not just what you're grateful for. And then episode number 219 is called How Self-Sabotage is Impacting Your MS and How to Stop. So those are the two episodes that you can listen to dive even further into that. But I want to get into some tangible things that our listeners can do when they're experiencing this performance anxiety. So I've got 3 questions for you, and we're going to dive into what can they do before, during, and after. So let's start with the before. What is one journaling or mindset strategy that someone with MS could use before going into a triggering environment?
This might be one of my favorite tools to use just in general, anytime I'm feeling anxious about anything. So this is definitely what I would recommend before you're going into a triggering environment. And it's what I call the worst case solution. So when you get that physical sensation and the emotional feeling of something that you're about to pursue, I would journal on what is the worst case situation. That's something that you probably can think of pretty quickly. And then journal through what is the worst case solution. If that worst case situation were to happen, what would you do? How would you go about that? What that will do is help you feel comfortable with navigating that if that does happen. And then what you're going to write after the worst case solution is the best case solution. And this is where you are writing over the top, best case, truly like magic wand situation. Like, what is the best case? And then you want to live in that moment. That's where the whole visualization tip comes into play. I don't believe that you can just start visualizing your dream situation without acknowledging the pain and the fear beforehand. So worst case situation with a worst case solution attached to it, and then go into your best case solution or best case situation.
That's a really great tip. And it's reminding me of a TV show, This Is Us. I love that TV show. There was one of the couples in there used to do worst case situation. They didn't do the solution though. I really like that nice little touch to it.
Yeah, I mean, on a personal level, I used this when I was going through egg freezing because I had this fear that I just didn't want to do it, even though this was such a personal choice and it was so empowering, right? I was so proud of myself for doing this. But once I started giving myself the shots for IVF, all of this stuff, then I wanted to back out. And I knew that I wouldn't back out. That's just not in me, in my nature to stop doing it. So that's when I started to get the fear of, I can't do this. I don't want to go through with this. And my worst case solution was, what if I get all the way through this and I end up in the hospital, and then as a single mom, I won't be able to pick up my son from school. And I just spiraled, and I let myself spiral. I let myself feel the challenging feelings. And what helped the most was coming up with that worst case solution, where I came up with, all right, these are all of the people that I think could help me, where I'm going to ask these mom friends who have never picked up Griffin from daycare, but I'm just going to assume that I'm going to ask them. They would be the ones that I would ask to pick up my son. And then my mom can help me do this. My sister can bring me food in the hospital, right? Completely hopefully, knock on wood, crazy situation and solution, but at least I felt secure in that. And then the best case solution was It goes smoothly. I'm in and out. And luckily, the best case solution is actually what happened.
I love that. Okay, so let's go into this situation where we are in it. It is happening. So when the person might be in real time walking to the restaurant or meeting up with the friends, picking someone up from daycare, and feeling like eyes are on them. What is a go-to calming or grounding practice that they could do in that moment?
I always believe that you need to put the focus back on you. Try to not necessarily tune out everybody else because I just don't think that's realistic. But in this situation, I would encourage you to try a presence practice. What that is, again, is just focus on you, not on others' thoughts and others' judgments. And how you do that is by being insanely acutely aware of something that one of your five senses, something that you can feel, see, smell. But I'm going to give you one specific thing that I love doing, and it's touching my thumb to my pointer finger. Those two, the pads of my finger, rubbing them so lightly and rubbing them to feel if I can feel the fingerprint. And just doing that and just knowing that you're trying to feel the fingerprint, you're so aware. I bet you even almost maybe for a second forgot I was speaking, right? You're just so acutely aware of what am I feeling? Maybe you're trying to feel if there's any heat that's generating from that. Or maybe you point or touch your thumb to your pointer finger, middle finger, ring finger, pinky, and you kind of go from there. So you're bringing the presence physically back to your body so that you're not thinking about what other people are thinking or thinking about your own self-awareness and your own judgments. You're just physically present.
I love that. So it's basically like distracting yourself so that your focus comes back to you. So this might be a tricky question, but sometimes with MS, distraction is tricky, especially when you're walking, because you have to be focusing on your walking in order to not trip. But I can see how that might also make you think more about your walking and the people looking at you while you're walking. So do you have any distraction tips that people who feel like they have to focus on their walking, and if they get too distracted by a conversation or by turning their head to look at people and that makes their walking worse, what could that person do in this moment where they're having this performance anxiety?
I think if they're walking by themselves, I would focus on your steps. I've seen your videos where I think there's 7 different steps to walking that you need to
There
perfect. Is
are.
that right?
Yes.
So I would actually slow down and try to focus on each of those 7 steps. I don't think that it would make you aware of your walking because you're not doing it from a place of other people I'm trying to do the most perfect walk. You are, in this instance, being aware of each of those 7 steps, or maybe just one, the part where you're swinging your foot from the back to the front, right? Or the foot flex or something, one of those 7 steps, just focus on one of them, knowing that you're doing it because you listened to this podcast episode to tune others out and to focus on yourself. It's just a different intention. So I think that that would be ideal. And if you are with other people, it depends on who you're with, but maybe you try holding their arm, holding their hand, and feel their hand, feel their arm as you walk with them.
I love that. Even if it's a mobility aid, like if you're holding a cane or a trekking pole or rollator, like are there grooves in it? How
Yes.
tightly are you squeezing? Focusing on that sensation, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so we've got a strategy for before this performance anxiety might kick in, during. Now, what about afterwards? So this is when the person might be ruminating or judging how they were walking or how it felt when they were walking and what people might have been thinking. How can they reframe the experience with compassion rather than shame?
This is when I would use my Calm Mind Blueprint, formerly known as the Breakthrough Blueprint. So if you go back and listen to episode 107, I go into a deep dive on this, but I'll give you the bare bones that will be helpful for right now. This is the self-reflection piece. This is where you can go back and you can reflect on the actual experience and question it and look at it for what it was rather than what it felt like in the moment. And so Calm Mind Blueprint is my 5 strategic prompts that get you from the place of how you currently are feeling, which is typically a place of maybe overwhelm, lack, anxiety, to a place of inner peace, self-trust, and higher self-worth with direction, with steps to get there. And so what those steps are, the first prompt is self-awareness. It's just journaling about what was the situation, what were your emotions during it. The second prompt is meaning. It's where you are questioning what attachments do you have to that experience, to what just happened. What judgments do you think other people had towards you or you had towards yourself? What expectations did you have? This is the shoulds, right? I should have been able to do that. I should be able to do XYZ, and I wasn't able to. So questioning all the shoulds, the expectations, the judgments that you have for yourself and perceive. And then the third prompt is curiosity, where you're asking, are all of those things true? Should you really be able to do that? Are they really thinking that about you? Are you really holding yourself to that standard? And as you can see, some of these will be yes, some of these will be no. The goal is not to say yes or no to either one of these. It's just opening up your perspective to something different. And then the fourth prompt is clarity. It's what is it that you actually want? How is it that you actually want to feel? Maybe you realize you don't want perfect walking. You just want to feel confident in the walk that you do have, or you want to feel like the person you're walking with is supporting you. Doesn't matter what everybody else around you is thinking. And then the last of the 5 prompts is action. And these are micro steps. So what can you do? Micro, teeny tiny, that will help you achieve the clarity that you just uncovered. So that's the Calm Mind Blueprint. Again, after you work through and are in the heat of the moment, that nervous system goes down. It goes back to being slightly more regulated, and you're in a better place where you can start questioning things.
I will put the link for people to sign up for the Calm Mind Blueprint in the show notes, because I personally, once you created that and shared with me how to use it, I personally use it so often. Most times when I'm journaling, and I'm specifically journaling through a situation, I think of the acronym that you have for that, and I take myself through it. And it is so nice because prior to that, gosh, I could journal for like 2 hours and still not have a solution or still not feel any better about the situation. And so this just gets you there faster. Mm-hmm. So I will put the link if anyone's like, oh my gosh, I need that. I will include that. But my next question is, so I have sent a few of my clients with MS your way to help with this exact issue. And in some cases, they are feeling stuck for many reasons, but one reason because they don't want to disclose their MS diagnosis, whether it's to their own family members, whether it's to coworkers or whoever. So how can they hold privacy and confidence at the same time?
Yeah. What I want to share is what I told a small group of your clients that were struggling with this, which is you can do both. You can hold privacy and confidence, because the goal isn't disclosure. And I think that might be something that we just assume that we have to do, that in order to feel confident, everybody has to know. We just have to air our dirty laundry, right? I think just switching the maybe perspective, but also the goal to finding freedom in your movement again, regardless of who's watching. And I think the way to do that is by separating your worth from your movement. It's all about trusting who you are and that you are way more than your physical capabilities and finding that self-worth.
Okay, that is super helpful. For almost 10 years, I've been helping people with MS. And what I've seen is that most people with MS have a desire to get stronger, but what they've tried hasn't worked. I've created a revolutionary program called The Missing Link specifically for people with MS, where I teach you how to strengthen your brain, your muscles, and the neural connection between the two, which is the key to seeing improvements in strength, walking, and everyday activities when you have MS. Regular exercise often doesn't cut it. But it's not just exercise. You'll experience the warmth of our supportive community where every small victory is celebrated and every struggle is met with encouragement. Check the link in the show notes to learn more about the missing link and see if it's a good fit for you. Okay, let's dive back in. What do you think success would look like emotionally, since we are talking a lot about mindset and feelings? What would success look like emotionally, even if the walk itself feels a little bit off? And even if they are using that distraction technique of, okay, I'm going to focus on the one component of lifting my ankle, but they can tell their ankle might not be lifting as much as they wish it would. What would that look like emotionally?
I just want to say that is an excellent journal prompt. And so I would challenge your listeners to listen to the next few examples that I will give, and then use that as a jumping off point. Use that to get your juices flowing, because this is something tangible that your listeners can use to then focus on the next time that they might be questioning their movement. But my answer to you would be success would look like using some of the examples you've already provided. So arriving to your restaurant table, walking in and feeling joy as you get to the table and you look at the other people around and you sit down, and joy is the feeling that you feel, right? You're not questioning how you got to the table. You're not questioning what it looked like or if other people were there. You are just excited to be there with the company. Or walking to the soccer field with your kids and feeling proud as you see the excitement on their face as they're about to go work really hard at their soccer game tonight, right? Focusing on the pride. It's choosing to focus on your internal experience of what's happening around you, or maybe who you're with, and not the external physical experience. Again, separating the physical experience of the bodies we're in from the internal emotional experience, and choosing which to focus on. Sometimes I don't like that quote of we get to choose what we want to focus on. I don't love that. But in this situation, I do think that that can be really powerful.
So one thing that we know about MS is that it's nicknamed the snowflake disease because it's a different experience for every person. So if someone's listening thinking, yeah, these are great tips, but it's not true for me, or, but my situation is XYZ, like it's different. And someone does want solutions for this and they do want to feel better and less performance anxiety, then how can they work with you so that you can understand their situation and help them individually get through this?
Working individually is my favorite way to work with people, because you are right. Every person is different in general, right? And especially with something like MS, there's so many different contributing factors and different things that different you in different ways, right? And so I do have private clients, and at any given time, there's any certain spaces open. At this current time, I have 2 openings. And so if you're interested in that, you could send me an email. And what that looks like is we have private calls together, and then we have private messenger access as well for those times that you are about to walk into the restaurant or you're about to do something physical and you might feel that performance anxiety. You have that messenger support to shoot me a quick message and I can coach you through that on the spot. And then the calls are there for, weekly times to catch up on those bigger mindset deep dives. And then I also do have small group coaching, and that is less individualized, but I've also gotten the feedback that the favorite aspect of my clients is hearing from other women. And so if you are a group person and you love hearing from other people, that's what small group coaching is. It's just one 90-minute monthly call for people who don't have much bandwidth, but really love that community and want some support as well.
Awesome. I will put your email. And then do you have a website as well in case people aren't sure if they want to work with you one-on-one or a group, or is the best place just to email you to figure it out?
Yep, I do have a website, one website that tells you about both of those options.
Perfect. So I'll put your email and the website in the show notes if anyone wants to work through this at a deeper level. Thank you so much for all these tips. My final question for you would be, you've given us lots of tips and things to think about, but if you had to pick one journal prompt or mantra or affirmation or whatever you want to call it that you would leave our listeners with today that they might use to get started, what would it be?
To preface, I always thought that I was a confident person and had very high self-worth until I started strategic journaling. And I realized how often I outsourced my decisions to other people and how often I questioned myself. And so with that in mind, even if you think that you are a very confident person with very high self-worth, just putting a pin in that for a second, my prompt for you would be, what would I do today if I trusted that my self-worth existed completely independent of how others perceive my symptoms? So if my self-worth were separate, different, independent from my physical body, what would be different and what would I do differently?
I like that. That's a great one. Well, this has been so helpful. Thank you so much. And for all of our listeners, please just know that you are not alone. When my group coaching client shared this, and this has happened on more than one occasion, and the same thing happened in both situations where one person shared that they were struggling with this, and everyone else responded like, oh my gosh, me too. Like, I've never shared that with anyone before. I feel the same way. And it was the first time. It literally looked like 5 light bulbs went off in the room, because for the first time ever, we were talking about this and someone mentioned something that they were struggling with too. So if you are struggling with this, you are not alone. You are not broken. You can rewrite the story that says that you have to be perfect and confident in all these situations using Samantha's tips and techniques and strategies. So thank you so much, Samantha, for sharing these with us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again for having me. Thanks for joining me for today's journal entry. If something resonated with you, I'd love to know about it. Screenshot this episode, share it on social media, and tag me at samantha.s.says. Or even leave a review, which will help more women find this podcast to create more fulfillment in their career and as a mom. And hey, if you're thinking, I wish I could get more of this, I've got you covered. Click on the link in the show notes, which I customize each week based on what we're talking about. And I always include the link to the Calm Mind Blueprint, which are my 5 journal prompts to go from overwhelm to inner peace in 2 to 10 minutes a day. Subscribe so that you catch my Thursday 5-minute journal with me episodes and next week's full episode where we will continue this journey together. I'll see you then.